So many of us sit in that restless silence, staring at a phone that doesn't ring, waiting for a message that doesn't come. We tell ourselves stories about why someone hasn't called, why they haven't reached out, and those stories often leave us feeling unworthy, rejected, or invisible. But the truth is, connection begins inside of us long before it shows up on a phone screen. Today, I want to share with you 8 truths that will shift your perspective so deeply that the energy you carry will invite him to call, to text, and to reach for you. There is a huge difference between chasing someone and attracting them. Chasing comes from a place of fear of being left out, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being chosen. When you chase, you're essentially saying, my worth depends on whether you pick me. And the problem with that mindset is that it hands all of your power over to someone else. Think about it this way. When you chase, you're running after someone who isn't running towards you. That creates imbalance, and imbalance in love often leads to exhaustion, resentment, and heartbreak. But attraction is completely different. Attraction doesn't require you to beg, force, or prove yourself. Attraction is about becoming so deeply rooted in your own value that people naturally want to draw closer to you. Attraction happens when you stop waiting for the call and instead pour energy into your own growth. When you laugh without needing an audience. When you pursue your goals with passion. When you walk into a room with your head high, not because you think you're better than anyone else, but because you know you're enough, something shifts. That shift is magnetic. Here's the truth. People are drawn to peace, not panic. They are drawn to presence, not desperation. When you are living fully, when your energy says, I am whole whether you call or not, that's when the phone buzzes, not because you manipulated it, but because your wholeness created a gravitational pull. So instead of chasing texts, start attracting respect. Instead of begging for love, start embodying love. When you stop running after someone's approval, you leave space for them to run towards you. And that is the beginning of real connection. One of the hardest truths to face in relationships is this. Silence hurts more than words. When the phone doesn't ring, when the text doesn't come, our minds don't just sit in neutral. They begin writing stories, and usually those stories are not kind to us. We tell ourselves things like, but he must not like me anymore. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I'm not attractive enough. Maybe I'm too much, or maybe I'm not enough. This is the dangerous power of assumption. We create entire narratives built on nothing but fear, and then we begin to live as if those narratives are truth. But here's the reality. Rejection is often not about you. Sometimes it's about his timing. Sometimes it's about his capacity. Sometimes it's about his fears, insecurities, or his inability to show up fully in a relationship. His silence doesn't mean you are unworthy. It means he is unavailable. That's not rejection. That's redirection. Rejection only becomes poisonous when we internalize it. When we say to ourselves, I wasn't chosen, so I must not be lovable. But the fact is, being chosen has nothing to do with your worth. You were worthy before his call. You are worthy without his text. You are worthy whether he recognizes it or not. Think of it this way. When a door closes, it doesn't mean you're locked out forever. It means that door wasn't meant for you. And often a closed door is a form of protection. How many times have you looked back at someone who didn't choose you and whispered, thank God? So I invite you to release the story of rejection. Instead of asking, why didn't he call me? Start asking, what am I learning about myself in this silence? Silence can teach you resilience. Silence can remind you that your value is not tied to someone else's attention. Silence can be a sacred pause where you discover your own voice again. When you rewrite the story, rejection transforms from a wound into wisdom. It is no longer about being unwanted. It becomes about being redirected toward what is truly aligned with your soul. And that shift, that healing, is what prepares you for a deeper, more authentic connection. Vulnerable confidence is the courage to say, I care about this connection. I care if you call. I care if you text. But my value does not rise or fall based on what you decide to do. It's admitting your desire without giving away your dignity. It's showing your heart without handing over your self-worth. Here's the truth. People are not drawn to perfection. They are drawn to authenticity. When you try to look too flawless, too unbothered, too detached, it creates distance. But when you let someone see both your strength and your softness, you create trust. And trust is the foundation of every lasting relationship. Think about it. Who do you feel closest to? It's not the person who pretends to have it all together. It's the one who says, me too, I've been there, I struggle sometimes. That level of honesty builds intimacy faster than any game of pretending not to care. Vulnerable confidence also means you stop overperforming for love. You don't have to text first every time. You don't have to prove your value through overgiving, oversharing, or overcommitting. Instead, you can stand in a quiet strength that says, I know who I am. I know what I bring. I don't need to fight for a seat at the table. I am the table. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop trying to be invincible, you actually become more magnetic, because nothing is more attractive than someone who knows they're human yet still stands tall in their worth. So if you want that call, if you want that text, don't chase it, don't demand it. Live with vulnerable confidence. Be open, be real, but also be grounded in who you are. That balance of honesty and strength creates a safe space for him to reach out, not because you pressured him, but because your presence feels genuine, trustworthy, and rare. When we care about someone deeply, our first instinct is often to hold on tighter. We think that if we text more, call more, remind them more, they will somehow feel how much we care. But here's the irony. Pressure almost always creates distance. What suffocates love is not a lack of passion. It's the absence of breathing room. Love, like oxygen, needs space. Think of it this way. When you plant a seed, you don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You water it, give it sunlight, and then you step back. Growth happens in the stillness, not in the constant pulling and checking. Relationships are the same. When you constantly demand proof, when you try to control the outcome, you rob the connection of its natural rhythm. Creating space doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you withdraw your love or build walls. It simply means you trust enough to loosen your grip. You give the other person room to choose you, not out of pressure, but out of genuine desire. Because here's the truth. A love that is chosen freely is always stronger than a love that is coerced. We often mistake silence for rejection, but sometimes silence is just someone taking a breath, figuring out how they feel, or working through their own fears. If you rush them, if you flood them with messages and expectations, you don't give them the gift of clarity. You give them the burden of pressure. And pressure doesn't inspire connection. It creates escape routes. Think about your own life. Have you ever felt smothered by someone's attention? At first it feels flattering, but eventually it becomes overwhelming. You start to crave space. Not because you don't care, but because you need room to breathe. The same is true for him. If every moment is filled with expectation, why didn't you reply yet? Do you still care? Where are you? Then the connection becomes heavy instead of life-giving. Space is not the enemy of intimacy. In fact, it is what makes intimacy possible. When you lean back, when you stop micromanaging the relationship, you allow curiosity to grow. He begins to wonder about you, to miss you, to want to reach out. And when he does call or text, it's not because you pushed him, it's because he truly wanted to. That is the kind of connection that lasts. So the next time you feel the urge to tighten your grip, pause, ask yourself, am I trying to control this or am I allowing it to breathe? Choosing space over pressure is not about losing love. It's about making sure the love you have is real, mutual, and sustainable. Every single one of us carries an energy that speaks long before our words ever do. You know this is true. Think about the times you've walked into a room and immediately felt the atmosphere shift. Maybe one person's presence brought calm, laughter, or comfort. Maybe someone else's energy felt heavy, tense, or draining. They didn't have to say a single word, yet you knew exactly how they were showing up. That's because energy communicates louder than language. When you're waiting for a call or a text, it's easy to slip into desperation without realizing it. You might still be smiling, still sending casual messages, still pretending to be fine, but the truth leaks out. People can sense when you're anxious, when you're trying too hard, or when you're afraid of being forgotten. That energy pushes them away, even if your words are polite. But when your energy is grounded in authenticity, when you are aligned with your values, when you're living a life you're proud of, when you know your worth regardless of who texts you, your presence becomes magnetic. It's not about acting cool or pretending not to care. Pretending is exhausting. Authenticity is effortless. Here's the secret. Authenticity isn't about perfection. It's about congruence. It's when your inside matches your outside. It's when you're not performing, not pretending, not shrinking, but simply showing up as the real you. And the real you is always more powerful than the version of yourself you think someone wants to see. That kind of energy is unforgettable. It lingers. People feel it even when you're not there. It's why some people think about you out of nowhere and decide to reach out. It's why the phone rings. It's not manipulation, it's resonance. When you're authentic, you create resonance that makes others want to connect with you again and again. So instead of asking yourself, what should I text so he'll respond? Ask, what energy am I carrying right now? Are you radiating fear or are you radiating peace? Are you sending out neediness or are you radiating self-respect? Because texts and calls don't just respond to words, they respond to energy. If you want lasting connection, let your energy be your loudest message. Smile because you mean it. Laugh because it feels good. Walk into the room as if you belong there because you do. And when you embody that kind of authentic presence, you won't need to beg for his attention, his curiosity, his admiration, and yes, even his calls and texts will naturally follow. Boundaries are not walls, they are bridges. They are not about keeping love out, they are about keeping your dignity in. When it comes to relationships, boundaries are the invisible lines that protect your heart while still allowing connection to grow. Without them, you lose yourself in the process of trying to be loved. Now, let's be honest, when someone doesn't call or text back, it can feel like rejection, and rejection cuts deep. In that vulnerable moment, many of us hand over our emotional power. We let one person's silence decide how we feel about ourselves. Suddenly, we're not just disappointed, we're spiraling. We're replaying every conversation, questioning every word, wondering what we did wrong. But here's the truth. When your emotions are at the mercy of someone else's actions, you've surrendered your peace. You've given away the steering wheel of your life, and that's where boundaries come in. Boundaries sound like, I care for you, but I won't beg for your attention. I will make space for you in my life, but not at the expense of my self-respect. Your silence will not define my worth. Guarding your emotional boundaries doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become cold or detached. It simply means you decide what you will and will not tolerate. It means you love yourself enough to protect your peace. Think about it. When you don't have boundaries, you end up on an emotional roller coaster, up when the text comes in, down when the phone stays silent. But when you do have boundaries, you create steadiness. You can still enjoy the call, you can still smile when the text arrives, but your entire self-worth doesn't rise and fall with it. This is what makes boundaries so attractive. They communicate self-respect, and self-respect is magnetic. It tells the world, I am valuable, I am whole, and while I would love to share my life with you, I do not need you to complete me. Ironically, when you guard your emotional boundaries, you often receive more respect, not less. Why? Because people sense that they cannot play with your heart carelessly. They sense that your love is real, but it is also sacred. And sacred things are treated with care. So ask yourself today, what boundaries do I need to put in place so that I no longer give my peace away every time someone else doesn't show up? Your answer to that question could be the very thing that shifts your relationships from fragile to unshakable. Guarding your emotional boundaries isn't selfish. It's the deepest act of self-love. And when you practice it, you stop chasing people who can't honor you, and you make space for the ones who will. Many of us are taught to shrink our light, to keep our joy small, or to downplay our wins so we don't make others uncomfortable. We're told that loving ourselves too much looks like pride. But the truth is, self-love is not arrogance, it's oxygen. It's what allows you to breathe fully in your own life. And when you breathe fully, you create space for others to do the same. Loving yourself loudly means you stop waiting for someone else to validate you. You stop treating a call or a text as evidence that you matter. Instead, you live in a way that constantly reminds you that you matter. You invest in your passions. You nurture your friendships. You set aside time to rest, to laugh, to dream. You celebrate small victories instead of brushing them off. You take yourself on dates. You enjoy your own company. When you do this, something shifts inside you. You begin to realize that your life is already full. A call from him, a text from him becomes a beautiful addition, but not a requirement for your joy. And paradoxically, it's that very fullness that makes you so attractive. People are drawn to those who don't need saving, those who radiate wholeness. Here's the other truth. When you love yourself loudly, you set the standard for how others will love you. If you treat yourself with kindness, others will learn that kindness is the only acceptable way to treat you. If you honor your own needs, others will either rise to meet them or remove themselves from your life. Either way, you win because you are no longer begging for scraps. You're dining at the table of your own worth. And don't mistake loud self-love for being performative. This isn't about posting curated perfection online or pretending you're happy all the time. Loving yourself loudly is about honesty. It's about saying, I'm still growing, I still have flaws, I still have bad days, but I choose to treat myself with respect and compassion anyway. That kind of self-love is contagious. It doesn't just inspire people to text you. It inspires them to want to be in your presence. So love yourself so fully that no unanswered message can shake you. Love yourself so loudly that the world begins to echo it back. When you do, you'll find that the calls, the texts, and the attention come not because you begged for them, but because your very being invites them. When fear is in charge, we send desperate messages, we overthink every emoji, we reread old conversations trying to decode hidden meanings. We don't just want connection, we demand it. And what happens? Instead of drawing the other person closer, fear pushes them away. Fear suffocates trust. That's why trust in timing is so important. Trust says, if this relationship is meant for me, I don't have to chase it down. It will align in its own time. Trust gives you the courage to stop forcing outcomes and start living your life while the story unfolds. Here's the paradox. The things we try to control most are often the things we lose quickest. But the things we hold with open hands, with patience, with grace, are the ones that often grow deeper. Timing matters. Sometimes the silence you hate is the very space needed for clarity, healing, or growth to take place on both sides. Trusting timing doesn't mean you sit passively and do nothing. It means you stay active in your own life, but you don't let impatience rob you of peace. You pursue your goals. You spend time with people who uplift you. You invest in your own joy. You live full today instead of putting your happiness on hold until someone else finally responds. And here's the beautiful truth. When you trust timing, you step out of desperation and into alignment. You stop asking, why isn't this happening yet? And you start trusting that the right things are already moving toward you, even if you can't see them yet. The silence isn't proof of rejection. It might be proof of preparation. So the next time you find yourself staring at your phone, heart racing, waiting for it to light up, Breathe. Remind yourself, I am not forgotten. I am not behind. What's meant for me will not pass me by. When you live from that truth, fear loses its grip and peace takes its place. And ironically, it's often when you stop demanding the call or the text, when you let go of fear and lean into trust, that it arrives. Not because you forced it, but because you created the space and the patience for love to bloom at its own perfect pace. We began this journey with a simple question: will he call or text me? But along the way, we discovered that the deeper question is, how do I show up for myself while I wait? Because here's the truth, your worth is not hidden in a phone call, a text message, or someone else's decision to choose you. Your worth has been with you all along. When you stop chasing and start attracting, you reclaim your power. When you release the story of rejection, you set your heart free from false narratives. When you stand in vulnerable confidence, you create trust. When you create space instead of pressure, you invite genuine desire. When your energy is authentic, you don't have to perform. Your presence speaks louder than words. When you guard your emotional boundaries, you protect your peace. When you love yourself loudly, you set the standard for how others love you. And when you trust timing over fear, you step out of desperation and into alignment. So yes, he may call, he may text, and when he does, it will not be because you begged or bent yourself out of shape. It will be because your authenticity, your confidence, and your wholeness drew him in. But even if he doesn't, you will no longer be waiting empty-handed. You will be standing full, strong, and radiant in your own life. Because at the end of the day, the goal was never just to hear from him. The goal was to come home to yourself. And when you do that, connection always follows.